22. Golden Age actresses who lost their beauty in the saddest ways. That will shock you. They were once the faces on every marquee goddesses of the silver screen whose beauty defined an era. But behind the glamour was a dark truth. When the lights dimmed, Hollywood turned its back. From tragic addictions to botched surgeries and unthinkable betrayals, these 22 Golden Age actresses didn't just lose fame, they lost everything. You won't believe how far some of them fell. Stay with us as we reveal the heartbreaking declines no one dares to talk about. Hit that like button, subscribe to Uncovered Tinseltown Uncovered, and drop a comment. We're about to uncover the stories they tried to erase. Audrey Hepburn remains a symbol of timeless elegance, remembered for her roles in Breakfast at Tiffany's and Roman Holiday. Born on May 4, 1929 in Brussels, she captivated the world with her doe-like eyes and slender frame. But few knew the physical toll her life had taken long before she ever stood in front of a camera. During World War II, a teenage Hepburn lived under Nazi occupation in the Netherlands. Food was scarce and she suffered from chronic malnutrition, surviving on tulip bulbs and bread crusts. This starvation stunted her growth and left her with lifelong digestive and immune system issues. By adulthood, her waif-like figure, often mistaken for fashionable thinness, was a permanent result of her wartime trauma. In the 1980s, Hepburn dedicated herself to humanitarian work with UNICEF. But in 1992, she was diagnosed with a rare form of abdominal cancer, pseudomyxoma peritonei. It had silently progressed before detection. By the time it was found, the cancer had spread aggressively. Her once luminous features became gaunt, her eyes sunken and her body frail. She lost significant weight and her public appearances became increasingly rare as her condition worsened. She passed away on January 20, 1993, at age 63 in Tolochenaz, Switzerland. Even in her final weeks, Audrey refused to hide. She spent her last Christmas in the Swiss Alps, smiling with her children and partner. But photos from that time reveal a woman aged far beyond her years, her former radiance dimmed by illness. Audrey Hepburn didn't lose her beauty to scandal or addiction. She lost it to war, quiet resilience, and an unforgiving disease. Her transformation was not the result of vanity or downfall, but a testament to her strength. She remained graceful even as the world watched her slowly fade. Susan Hayward. Born June 30, 1917 in Brooklyn, rose to stardom with her intense performances and fiery red hair, earning an Academy Award for I Want to Live 1958. But few could foresee the tragic irony that her most beautiful roles would come at a deadly cost. In 1956, Hayward filmed The Conqueror alongside John Wayne in St. George, Utah, downwind from U.S. government nuclear testing sites. Unbeknownst to the cast, the soil and environment were saturated with radioactive fallout. The set was dubbed Death Valley by some insiders, but warnings went ignored. Years later, the consequences became horrifyingly clear. 91 of the 220 crew members developed cancer, including Hayward. She was diagnosed with brain cancer in the early 1970s. The vibrant star began deteriorating rapidly. Chemotherapy caused hair loss, her facial features became swollen from medication, and her energy dwindled. Once known for her fierce screen presence, she became nearly unrecognizable in her final public appearances. Hayward died on March 14, 1975, at just 57. Her story remains one of Hollywood's darkest cover-ups, a tale where beauty was literally poisoned in pursuit of cinematic magic. Her decline wasn't self-inflicted, but caused by government negligence and industry indifference. Ava Gardner. Born December 24, 1922 in North Carolina, was often referred to as the world's most beautiful animal. Her sultry green eyes and magnetic aura made her a natural star in classics like The Killers, 1946, and The Barefoot Contessa, 1954. But behind her allure was a life marked by failed love, declining health, and an isolated end. Gardner struggled with alcoholism throughout her adult life. Her marriages, including one to Frank Sinatra, were passionate but toxic. Over time, heavy drinking and chain smoking eroded her vitality. By the 1980s, the once glamorous siren was living in London battling emphysema and an autoimmune disorder that affected her mobility. In 1986, she suffered a severe stroke that left her partially paralyzed and confined to a wheelchair. Her speech was slurred, her once sculpted features drooped, and her mobility became limited. She refused further surgery and relied on Frank Sinatra, ironically, one of the few people who remained close to pay her medical bills. Gardner died on January 25, 1990, at age 67. She had once said, "I either write the book or sell the jewels." She chose to do neither. Her beauty faded, not just from age, but from illness, loneliness, and a body ravaged by years of quiet suffering. She remained proud, but distant, a shadow of the goddess she once was. Gail Russell. Born September 21, 1924 in Chicago, never dreamed of stardom. Painfully shy and socially anxious, she was discovered more for her haunting beauty than acting ambitions. With deep, sorrowful eyes and porcelain skin, she stunned in films like The Uninvited 1944 and Angel and the Bad Man 1947. But Gail's secret battle with anxiety would slowly erode her beauty and ultimately her life. Terrified of performing and overwhelmed by studio pressure, she began drinking heavily on set to cope. Alcohol numbed her nerves but began to consume her. Over time, her once delicate features became puffy, her complexion dulled, and her reputation in Hollywood soured. Studio execs labeled her unreliable, and roles dried up. In 1957, her name returned to headlines not for a film but for crashing her car into a coffee shop while intoxicated. Mugshots revealed a drastically changed woman, swollen, disheveled, and barely recognizable. Despite brief attempts at recovery, Russell couldn't escape addiction. She was found dead in her small apartment on August 26, 1961, surrounded by empty bottles. She was just 36 years old. The cause of death was officially liver failure, though her friends said her heart gave out long before that. Russell's fall from grace wasn't flamboyant. It was quiet, tragic, and deeply human. She didn't lose her beauty to scandal or vanity, but to an untreated illness that Hollywood never made space for. In the end, the industry that loved her face did nothing to save the soul behind it. Gene Tierney, born November 19, 1920, was one of the most ethereal beauties of Hollywood's golden age. With her porcelain skin, high cheekbones, and piercing eyes, she mesmerized audiences in films like Laura 1944 and Leave Her to Heaven 1945. But her flawless appearance masked unimaginable pain. During a World War II USO event, a fan with rubella unknowingly exposed Tierney to the virus while she was pregnant. Her daughter was born blind, deaf, and with severe developmental disabilities. The trauma left Tierney devastated and emotionally shattered. She began to suffer from severe depression, and by the early 1950s, her mental health declined rapidly. She was institutionalized and subjected to over 27 sessions of electroconvulsive therapy, ECT. Though common at the time, the procedure left Tierney with memory loss, a flattened affect, and physical side effects that dulled her once vivid expressions. Her return to acting was met with compassion, but audiences noticed the change in her demeanor. She withdrew from Hollywood and lived much of her later life in seclusion. Though she eventually remarried and found some peace, her face never regained its former light. The emotional weight she carried had reshaped it not just physically, but spiritually. Tierney died on November 6, 1991, aged 70. Her beauty didn't fade due to vanity or scandal, but was gently stripped away by grief, motherhood, and a medical system that did not yet understand how to heal the mind. Hedy Lamarr, born November 9, 1914 in Vienna, was hailed as the most beautiful woman in the world. Her exotic features, strong jawline, and hypnotic eyes made her unforgettable in films like Algiers 1938 and Samson and Delilah 1949. But Lamarr's brilliance extended far beyond her face, something Hollywood failed to appreciate. Privately, she was a scientist. During World War II, Lamarr co-invented a frequency-hopping technology designed to prevent Axis powers from jamming Allied torpedoes. Her patent later became foundational for Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, but she was ignored, ridiculed, and never financially compensated. As roles dried up in the 1950s, Lamarr turned to plastic surgery to maintain her appearance. But the procedures were crude by modern standards. A botched facelift and repeated injections left her face tight, uneven, and unnatural. By the 1970s, her once sculpted features had become distorted, drawing more pity than admiration. In her final years, she became reclusive, speaking only by phone, even to her children. She rarely left her home and filed lawsuits against companies for unauthorized use of her image, desperate to reclaim her legacy. Lamarr died in 2000 at the age of 85. Her ashes were scattered in the Vienna woods she loved as a child. Though her beauty was celebrated in her youth, her later life revealed the price of being valued for appearance over intellect. She lost her looks, yes, but what she truly lost was recognition. A brilliant mind trapped in a body the world only saw as ornamental. Rita Hayworth. Born Margarita Carmen Cancino on October 17, 1918, was the ultimate screen siren of the 1940s. Her sensual performance in Gilda 1946 made her a global icon. With her thick auburn waves and smoldering gaze, she embodied desire for an entire generation. But her glamorous image belied a personal life of abuse, betrayal, and tragic decline. Hayworth's early career was engineered by Columbia Pictures, who forced her to undergo painful electrolysis to raise her hairline and anglicize her features. Her name was changed. Her identity erased all to fit Hollywood's mold of acceptable beauty. Behind the scenes, she endured 5 failed marriages, including one to director Orson Welles and another to Prince Ali Khan. Each relationship left her emotionally scarred. She began drinking heavily to cope, and by the 1960s, signs of cognitive impairment began surfacing. Doctors initially misdiagnosed her with alcoholism. In truth, she was one of the first high-profile victims of Alzheimer's disease, though the condition was poorly understood at the time. She forgot lines, missed cues, and became increasingly disoriented in public. Her once vibrant eyes grew vacant, and the grace she was known for dissolved into confusion. Hayworth spent her later years in near-total isolation. She died on May 14, 1987, at age 68. By then, the love goddess could no longer recognize her own face in the mirror. Her story is among the saddest in Hollywood history, not because she aged, but because her identity, memories, and beauty were stolen by a disease she couldn't fight. Her decline wasn't scandalous, it was silent and slow, and no less tragic. Grace Kelly. Born November 12, 1929 in Philadelphia, achieved cinematic immortality in just 6 years. With her regal poise, icy beauty, and subtle sensuality, she captivated audiences in Rear Window 1954 and To Catch a Thief 1955. But her life took a dramatic turn when she gave up acting to become Princess of Monaco in 1956. Though the marriage to Prince Rainier seemed like a fairy tale, it came at the cost of her identity. Forbidden from returning to Hollywood, Kelly became isolated in palace life, reduced to ceremonial duties. Over time, the rigid expectations of royalty began to erode her glow. By the 1970s, Kelly's health declined. She reportedly suffered from depression and felt imprisoned by her royal image. Her once vibrant complexion dulled, her posture grew more rigid, and her eyes lost their luster. The natural beauty that once made her Hitchcock's ideal blonde was slowly replaced by visible weariness. In 1982, at age 52, Kelly suffered a stroke while driving, causing her car to plunge off a Monaco cliffside. She died the next day, leaving behind a world stunned by her sudden departure. Photographs from her final public appearances show a woman who had grown distant, tired, and nearly unrecognizable. Grace Kelly didn't lose her beauty to addiction or scandal. She lost it to isolation pressure and the slow fading of a woman trapped inside a role she could never escape. Vivien Leigh, born November 5, 1913 in British India, was a study in contradictions, fiery yet delicate, strong yet vulnerable. Her portrayal of Scarlett O'Hara in Gone with the Wind, 1939, remains legendary, but the grace she exuded on screen masked a lifelong war with mental and physical illness. Leigh suffered from severe bipolar disorder long before the condition was understood or treated effectively. Her mood swings were extreme, and episodes of mania would be followed by crushing depressions that often made filming nearly impossible. Co-stars and directors noted her brilliance, but also her volatility. Tuberculosis, which she contracted in the 1940s, further ravaged her health. The disease sapped her energy and left her increasingly gaunt. During flare-ups, her face appeared hollow, her weight fluctuated, and her famous green eyes dulled. By the 1950s, her public appearances became erratic, and the once celebrated beauty began to look exhausted, weathered by invisible battles. Leigh's final years were marked by solitude. Her marriage to Sir Laurence Olivier dissolved, and she spent more time away from the stage. She died on July 8, 1967, at age 53 from complications of tuberculosis. Vivien Leigh's decline was not a moral fall, but a quiet surrender to illnesses that stripped her of joy, strength, and eventually her legendary appearance. Her beauty faded as her suffering grew, another tragic casualty of fame, brilliance, and untreated disease. Dorothy Dandridge, born November 9, 1922 in Cleveland, was the first black woman nominated for a Best Actress Oscar for Carmen Jones, 1954. With her sultry voice, luminous skin, and undeniable charisma, she broke racial barriers in a segregated industry. But behind the accolades was a life haunted by pain, neglect, and a cruel system. Despite her breakthrough, Dandridge found herself pigeonholed. She was offered roles that stereotyped black women or reduced them to ornamental background figures. Her frustration grew as she watched white contemporaries like Marilyn Monroe and Elizabeth Taylor receive roles she was more than qualified to play. Financial struggles mounted after mismanaged funds left her nearly bankrupt. Her daughter Harolyn was born with brain damage and required lifelong care, adding emotional and financial strain. Dandridge turned to alcohol and prescription pills to cope. Her appearance changed rapidly. Once radiant and full of vitality, she grew frail and thin. Friends noted her sunken cheeks, jittery energy, and increasingly erratic behavior. She became a shadow of the star she once was. On September 8, 1965, Dandridge was found dead in her Los Angeles apartment. She was 42. The cause was ruled an overdose, possibly accidental, and her body bore the marks of malnutrition. Dorothy Dandridge lost her beauty not through vice, but through injustice. Hollywood celebrated her just long enough to use her image, then abandoned her when she needed support most. Her story remains a cautionary tale of brilliance left unprotected. Patricia Neal, born January 20th, 1926 in Kentucky, was a powerhouse talent known for her roles in HUD, 1963. The Day the Earth Stood Still, 1951, and A Face in the Crowd, 1957. With her smoky voice and commanding presence, she stood apart from the glamour queens of her era. But behind her sharp features and confident stride was a woman who would endure some of the most brutal physical traumas of any Golden Age actress. In 1965, at just 39, Neal suffered a series of massive strokes while pregnant with her fifth child. She was left in a coma for 3 weeks and emerged partially paralyzed, unable to speak or walk. Her face, once firm and expressive, became slack on one side. Her speech returned only after grueling rehabilitation. The public was shocked. Just years earlier, she had accepted an Oscar in perfect health. Now she appeared frail, distorted, and vulnerable. Her beauty didn't fade with age, it was violently stolen by medical catastrophe. Despite her condition, Neal returned to acting and even earned another Oscar nomination, but the sparkle was gone. Her appearance changed permanently. Her mobility restricted her once poised elegance, replaced by sheer determination to function. Patricia Neal's decline was not a fall from grace. It was a testament to her grit. Still, her story is one of beauty, disrupted resilience demanded, and an industry unsure how to embrace a woman changed by tragedy. Lupe Velez. Born July 18, 1908 in Mexico, was one of early Hollywood's most vivacious stars. Dubbed the Mexican Spitfire, she captivated audiences with her fiery energy and passionate on-screen presence. But behind the wild persona was a woman consumed by heartbreak and societal rejection. After a string of high-profile romances, including an ill-fated marriage to actor Johnny Weissmuller, Velez found herself pregnant in 1944, allegedly by a man who refused to marry her. In a time when unwed motherhood was seen as scandalous, she felt cornered and humiliated. Rather than face public disgrace, Velez planned a dramatic exit. She arranged her bedroom to resemble a movie set dressed in silk pajamas and took an overdose of Seconal. But the outcome was far from cinematic. Reports suggest she vomited from the pills and died in her bathroom, not her bed. Her face, once adored for its animated charm and expressive warmth, was found contorted in pain. The press feasted on the irony. Hollywood's most dramatic personality had died a grim, inglorious death. Her beauty wasn't lost. Slowly it vanished in a single night of despair. Lupe Velez's legacy became a cautionary tale, and her vibrant image was overshadowed by tabloid myth. Her decline was tragic, not because she faded from memory, but because her end became a punchline in an industry that never treated her with dignity. Veronica Lake. Born November 14, 1922, became an icon almost overnight, thanks to her peekaboo hairstyle and sultry performances in films like Sullivan's Travels 1941 and This Gun for Hire 1942. Her small stature, cool demeanor, and hypnotic gaze made her a poster girl of 1940s noir. But fame was fleeting, and Lake's fall was both swift and brutal. Lake struggled with alcoholism throughout her career. She clashed with co-stars and directors, and her erratic behavior led to fewer roles. By the early 1950s, her contracts dried up, and she drifted into poverty. Her once lustrous blonde hair thinned. Her skin, once flawless, grew weathered from years of neglect and alcohol abuse. She was discovered working as a hotel barmaid in Manhattan in the 1960s, her former glamour reduced to whispers from stunned customers. She attempted a small comeback with an autobiography and minor roles, but her physical transformation made her unrecognizable. Lake died of hepatitis and renal failure on July 7, 1973, at just 50 years old. Her final photos show a gaunt, sickly woman nowhere near the magnetic beauty who once captured America's imagination. Veronica Lake didn't just lose her beauty, she lost her place. Her story became a chilling reminder of how quickly Hollywood disposes of those it once exalted. Her decline was not dramatic, but quietly devastating. Frances Farmer. Born September 19, 1913 in Seattle, was not your typical Hollywood starlet. Her classic beauty-striking eyes, sculpted face, and statuesque grace was matched by a fiercely independent spirit. But her refusal to play by the rules led to one of Hollywood's most chilling downfalls. After acclaimed performances in films like Come and Get It 1936, Farmer began openly criticizing the industry's sexism and control. Labeled difficult, she was soon blackballed. Her erratic behavior, later believed to be symptoms of bipolar disorder, led to involuntary institutionalization. What followed was years of alleged abuse behind asylum walls. Electroshock therapy, isolation, and rumored lobotomies, though never confirmed, left Farmer broken. The physical toll was devastating. Her once luminous face sagged prematurely, her eyes dulled, and her figure bloated from medication. By the time she was released in the 1950s, Farmer was a ghost of her former self. Her attempts at comebacks were met with curiosity, not admiration. She became a symbol not of triumph, but of tragedy. Frances Farmer died in 1970 of esophageal cancer at 56. Her beauty wasn't lost to age or scandal, it was erased by a system that crushed women who dared to rebel. Marie Prevost, born November 8, 1896, was one of the silent era's most sought-after comediennes. With her lively expressions, sparkling eyes, and hourglass figure, she dazzled audiences in films like The Married Flapper, 1922. But as the silent era faded and talkies took over, Prevost's career collapsed almost overnight. Depressed and unable to land roles, she turned to alcohol and comfort eating. Her weight fluctuated wildly, drawing brutal comments from the press. Columnist Luella Parsons mocked her as a cautionary tale, and producers no longer returned her calls. By the mid-1930s, she was completely destitute. She lived alone in a crumbling apartment, often pawning furniture to buy food. When she died in 1937 of acute alcoholism and malnutrition, she weighed just 75 pounds. It took days before her body was found with her starving dachshund nearby, fueling tabloid rumors that the dog had partially consumed her remains, a claim later exaggerated. Marie Prevost's decline was heartbreaking, not because she aged or faded, but because she was abandoned. Her beauty was buried beneath hunger, neglect, and public mockery. She became one of Hollywood's earliest cautionary ghosts. Mae Murray, born May 10, 1885, was a glittering symbol of 1920s opulence. Known as the girl with the bee-stung lips, she starred in hits like The Merry Widow, 1925, and became a fashion icon of her time. Her exaggerated makeup, swan-like movements, and daring style defined an era, but it also defined her downfall. Murray clashed with studio heads and walked out of a lucrative MGM contract. The industry, unforgiving to aging women, quickly shut her out. She married poorly once to a fraudster who squandered her fortune and fell into a bitter legal battle over custody of her son. Determined to cling to her image, Murray continued wearing her 1920s makeup well into the 1950s, becoming a figure of ridicule. Her lips, once alluring, now looked cartoonish, her style outdated. She wandered Beverly Hills penniless and confused, often claiming she was still a star. By the time she entered a nursing home in her 70s, no one recognized her. Mae Murray died in 1965, broke and forgotten. Her beauty didn't vanish overnight. It was slowly drowned in delusion, rejection, and the cruel march of time. Once a queen of the silent screen, she ended as a ghost of glamour's past. Dolores Hart, born October 20th, 1938, had a face made for the silver screen, angelic, serene, and captivating. She rose to prominence in the late 1950s, with roles opposite Elvis Presley in Loving You, 1957, and King Creole, 1958, becoming a rising star with studio executives predicting a brilliant future. But at the peak of her fame, Hart made a shocking decision. She left Hollywood and became a Roman Catholic nun. At just 24, she joined the Abbey of Regina Laudis in Connecticut, choosing spiritual fulfillment over cinematic glory. Her departure stunned fans and colleagues. For decades, she lived in monastic seclusion, far removed from the spotlight that once adored her. Years of cloistered living and physical labor transformed her appearance. The glamorous hair makeup and couture vanished. Her skin weathered, her posture grew humbled, and she embraced a plainness that defied every beauty standard Hollywood had once upheld. Though she never experienced scandal or illness, her story is often told as one of lost beauty, not by force, but by choice. Dolores Hart's rejection of fame wasn't a fall, it was a retreat. Yet the world still remembers her as the beauty who gave it all up for faith. Susan Peters, born July 3, 1921, was one of MGM's brightest young stars in the early 1940s. With her delicate features and intelligent screen presence, she earned an Oscar nomination for Random Harvest 1942 at just 21. Her future seemed limitless. But in 1945, during a hunting trip, a rifle accidentally discharged, severing her spinal cord. Peters was left paralyzed from the waist down. The injury abruptly halted her momentum and drastically changed her appearance and public image. Confined to a wheelchair, her once glamorous figure grew frail. Her face, though still beautiful, carried a haunting sadness. Determined, she took roles in radio and even returned to the stage, but her physical limitations and Hollywood's reluctance to feature disabled performers marginalized her. Depression followed. Her marriage crumbled and her health declined due to inadequate care and emotional strain. She died in 1952 at just 31, reportedly of complications from anorexia and kidney failure. Susan Peters lost her beauty not from age, but from a single moment that shattered everything. Her story remains one of the most abrupt and heartbreaking declines in classic Hollywood history. Linda Darnell. Born October 16, 1923, was known for her breathtaking beauty, almond eyes, high cheekbones, and a smoldering on-screen presence. She starred in Forever Amber, 1947, and A Letter to Three Wives, 1949, capturing the essence of mid-century glamour. But behind the scenes, Darnell struggled with insecurity and typecasting. She longed for dramatic roles, yet Hollywood kept her in the seductress box. By the 1950s, her career faltered. Financial trouble and a rocky personal life led to heavy drinking, and the stress began to show on her face. Her weight fluctuated, her skin lost its glow, and she increasingly looked older than her age. Then tragedy struck. In 1965, while staying at her former secretary's house in Illinois, a fire broke out. Darnell sustained burns over 80% of her body. She died the next day at 41, unrecognizable and in agonizing pain. Her beauty was not only faded, it was violently erased. The industry that once prized her image had long moved on. Darnell's death wasn't just tragic. It was symbolic of how quickly Hollywood can burn out its brightest stars. Gloria Grahame. Born November 28, 1923, was a sultry standout in 1940s and 50s noir films. With her pouty lips, whispery voice, and aloof magnetism, she stole scenes in The Big Heat and It's a Wonderful Life. Her seductive aura won her an Oscar for The Bad and the Beautiful, 1952. But behind that allure was a deep-seated insecurity that would eventually distort her beauty. Grahame became obsessed with the shape of her upper lip. Believing it was too thin, she underwent multiple plastic surgeries, including dangerous implants and fillers, in an era when such procedures were crude and unregulated. Over time, her lip became stiff and misshapen, causing noticeable changes in her facial expressions. As the surgeries accumulated, her once vivid features hardened. Casting directors grew hesitant. Roles dried up. She continued working in B-movies and stage productions, but her appearance, now tight and unnatural, no longer matched the public's memory of her. In the late 1970s, Grahame was diagnosed with breast cancer. She refused conventional treatment and died in 1981 at age 57 after collapsing in a hotel room in England. The final images of her show a woman still trying to smile through lips that no longer moved naturally. Gloria Grahame didn't lose her beauty overnight. It was slowly erased by her own hands, driven by an industry that convinced her she was never quite enough. Barbara Payton. Born November 16, 1927, seemed destined for stardom. With piercing blue eyes, platinum hair, and raw sensuality, she dazzled in films like Kiss Tomorrow Goodbye, 1950, opposite James Cagney. But Payton's downfall became one of Hollywood's most public and painful. In the early 1950s, she became entangled in a scandalous love triangle with actors Franchot Tone and Tom Neal. A violent altercation left Tone hospitalized and Payton's reputation in ruins. Studios blacklisted her and the press hounded her relentlessly. With no roles and mounting bills, Payton spiraled into alcoholism and sex work. Mugshots, tabloid snapshots, and police reports documented her rapid decline. Her once gorgeous face became bloated and ravaged by years of drinking and street life. Teeth fell out. Her skin yellowed. Her eyes, once luminous, became vacant. By the 1960s, she was living in a flophouse, selling her body for as little as $5. She died in 1967 from heart and liver failure at age 39. Her final photos are haunting a fallen goddess, barely recognizable, abandoned by an industry that once crowned her its next big thing. Barbara Payton's beauty didn't fade. It was devoured by shame, addiction, and the brutal weight of tabloid fame. Her name became synonymous not with stardom, but with cautionary ruin. Judy Garland, born June 10, 1922, was the heartbeat of classic Hollywood musicals. As Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz, she embodied innocence and wonder. But that childhood role would become both her crown and her curse. Pushed into showbiz at age 2, Garland was put on amphetamines and barbiturates by MGM to manage her weight and sleep patterns. This began a lifetime of chemical dependency. Though she possessed one of the greatest voices in entertainment history, her personal life was a series of breakdowns, bankruptcies, and toxic relationships. Her face aged rapidly. By her early 30s, Garland looked closer to 50. Puffy eyes, uneven skin tone, and erratic weight changes marred her once fresh image. Substance abuse and emotional turmoil left her voice strained and her performances increasingly erratic. Still, she pressed on delivering breathtaking concerts even as her health collapsed. By 1969, she was performing in small venues, clinging to the last fragments of her career. She died in London at age 47 from an accidental overdose. Judy Garland's beauty faded under the weight of exploitation, addiction, and heartbreak. The girl who sang "Over the Rainbow" never escaped the storm. Her final act wasn't a performance, it was a slow, public unraveling of a legend who gave the world everything and got so little peace in return. In a world that once celebrated their radiance, these 22 women were quietly cast aside when beauty faded or life turned cruel. But their stories are far more than cautionary tales. They are reflections of a brutal system that valued appearances over humanity. What do you think truly defines lasting legacy? Fame, beauty, or resilience? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and let's honor their truth together. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to Uncovered Tinseltown Uncovered, and help us preserve the real stories of Hollywood's past stories that demand to be remembered, not rewritten.